I think I didn't do anything wrong, just asked for a bit more excitement in our marriage. But when the lawyer's letter came in the mail, I realized my husband was never going to let this go. All I did was suggest a little fun, but now he's turning my entire life upside down. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The kitchen was dimly lit by the overhead light when I finally worked up the courage to bring it up. Sam was loading the dishwasher, methodically placing each plate in its designated spot, everything in perfect order, just like always. That predictability was exactly what I wanted to change. "Sam, we need to talk about something," I said, leaning against the counter with what I hoped was casual confidence. He looked up, his brown eyes tired from another long day managing IT projects. At 36, Sam had settled into a routine that felt more like a prison to me. Work, dinner, help Mila with homework, watch TV, sleep, rinse and repeat. "What's on your mind, Eirene?" I took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about us, about our marriage. Don't you think we could use a little more excitement?" Sam's hands stilled on the plates. "What kind of excitement?" "Well," I said, trying to sound lighthearted, "what if we invited someone over, to spice things up a bit?" The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Sam slowly straightened, his face unreadable. "Someone like who?" My heart hammered, but I'd come this far. "Like Rowan. You remember Rowan, right? We dated before I met you. He's been asking about us, and I thought, you want to invite your ex-boyfriend into our bed?" Sam's voice was barely above a whisper. "It's not that weird, Sam. Everyone tries new things these days. Couples explore, they experiment. It doesn't mean anything serious, it's just fun." Sam's face had gone pale. "Fun? You want to have sex with your ex-boyfriend in our bed, in our home where our daughter sleeps, and you call it fun?" I felt my temper flare. This was exactly the reaction I'd expected. Closed-minded, judgmental, boring Sam. "You're being unreasonable. It's 2024, not 1950. Married couples do this all the time." "Do they?" Sam's voice was getting quieter, which I knew meant he was getting angrier. "And how long have you been thinking about this? How long have you been talking to Rowan?" "It's not like that." "How long, Eirene?" I could hear 7-year-old Mila's footsteps upstairs, probably getting ready for bed. "We're just friends. We text sometimes. It's innocent." Sam laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Innocent. Right." He closed the dishwasher with more force than necessary. "I need some air." "Sam, wait." But he was already walking away, leaving me alone in the kitchen with my racing thoughts. I pulled out my phone and quickly typed a message to my best friend Cassidy. "Had the talk. He's being dramatic, as expected." Her response came immediately. "Stay strong, girl. He'll come around. Men always do." Then I opened another conversation and typed, "Ready for Friday?" before I could lose my nerve. Rowan's response was almost instant. "If you're sure about this." I was sure. I deserved more than this mundane existence, more than a husband who came home exhausted every day and fell asleep during movies. I deserved passion, adventure, excitement. What I didn't know was that Sam was upstairs, sitting on the edge of our bed, calling his mother. The fitness studio was empty except for the emergency lighting when I arrived Thursday evening. Rowan had given me the code months ago, back when our innocent texting had evolved into something more. The familiar scent of rubber mats and cleaning supplies filled my nostrils as I made my way to his office in the back. Rowan Latch looked exactly like the fantasy I'd been nurturing for months. At 35, he'd maintained the athletic build that had first attracted me 15 years ago. His dark hair was perfectly tousled, and his smile still made my stomach flutter. "You came," he said, standing up from his desk chair. "I said I would." I moved closer, feeling that familiar thrill of doing something forbidden. Friday's still on, right? Rowan's expression grew uncertain. Eirene, I have to ask, are you absolutely sure Sam's okay with this? Because when we talked about it before, it was just fantasy. This feels real now. I waved away his concerns. Sam's warming up to the idea. He's just shy, you know. Once he sees how natural it all is, he'll relax. It wasn't true, of course. Sam had barely spoken to me since our kitchen conversation. He'd slept in the guest room and left for work early without his usual goodbye. But Rowan didn't need to know that. I don't know, Rowan said, running a hand through his hair. Maybe we should wait until what? I stepped closer, placing my hand on his chest. Until we're too old to enjoy ourselves? Until I'm completely dead inside from boredom? He covered my hand with his. That's not what I meant. Then what? Are you getting cold feet? No, it's just, this is a big step. Once we do this, there's no going back. I felt a flutter of panic. Was Rowan backing out? After all the build-up, all the excitement, was he going to abandon me too? You're the one who said I deserved better. You're the one who said Sam was holding me back. I know, but... My phone buzzed. A text from Cassidy. Girl, maybe slow down a bit? This seems like a lot. I quickly typed back, You were encouraging me yesterday. That was before I really thought about it. What about Mila? I shoved the phone back in my purse, irritated. Everyone was being so dramatic about this. Look, I said to Rowan, if you don't want to do this, just say so. But don't pretend it's because you're worried about Sam. We both know he's never been enough for me. Rowan studied my face for a long moment. Okay, Friday it is. I felt a rush of triumph. Finally, someone who understood what I needed. I drove home feeling more alive than I had in months. Sam was in the living room when I walked in, Mila curled up next to him on the couch watching a Disney movie. The picture of domestic bliss that used to comfort me now felt suffocating. Where were you? Sam asked, without looking at me. Book club ran late. I lied smoothly. Did Mila finish her homework? Yes, we did it together. Mila looked up at me with Sam's brown eyes. Mommy, why was Daddy sleeping in the other room? I felt Sam's gaze on me. Daddy just needed better sleep for work, sweetheart. Later, after Mila was in bed, I found Sam in his home office, staring at his computer screen. But he wasn't working. He was looking at my phone, which I'd carelessly left charging on his desk. Find anything interesting? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Sam looked up at me, and I saw something in his expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt. Something colder. Is there something you want to tell me, Eirene? My heart pounded, but I kept my composure. Like what? Like why you've been texting your ex-boyfriend every day for the past 3 months. I forced a laugh. We're friends, Sam. I told you that. Friends. He turned the phone toward me. Friends who make plans for Friday night adventures and talk about what I don't need to know? I could see several of my messages on the screen, taken out of context but damning nonetheless. You went through my phone? It was right here, and it kept buzzing. I thought it might be important. That's a violation of my privacy. Your privacy? Sam stood up, and I took a step back. Eirene, what exactly are you planning for Friday? I lifted my chin defiantly. I'm planning to save our marriage. Saturday night at Marcello's should have been a celebration. It was Sam's birthday, and I'd arranged for all our friends and family to join us. His mother Evelyn, his sister Jada, my father Marcus, and our couple friends Derek and Lisa. I'd even convinced Cassidy to come, though she'd been acting strange all week. The restaurant was bustling with weekend energy, the warm lighting and Italian music creating the perfect ambiance for what I hoped would be a turning point. Sam had been civil but distant since our confrontation over the phone messages, and I was determined to break through his stubbornness. So, Sam, I said loudly enough for the table to hear, cutting into the conversation about his latest project at work. Have you given any more thought to what we discussed? Sam's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Eirene, I think it's wonderful when couples are open-minded about exploring new experiences together. I smiled brightly at our friends. Don't you think marriage should be about adventure? Evelyn, Sam's 62-year-old mother, set down her wineglass with a sharp clink. What kind of adventures? I felt emboldened by the attention. Oh, trying new things, meeting new people. Sam's always been a little conservative, but I think he's finally ready to expand his horizons. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat. That's great? Actually, I continued, warming to my theme, I've been reconnecting with an old friend, Rowan. You remember Rowan, don't you, Sam? We dated before I met you. He's a fitness instructor now, absolutely gorgeous, and he's been helping me realize that I deserve more excitement in my life. The table had gone completely silent. Mila, who had been coloring quietly in her booster seat, looked up with confusion at the sudden tension. Sam's face had gone ashen. Eirene, stop. Stop what? I'm just being honest about our marriage, about how we're working together to spice things up. I laughed, but it sounded shrill even to my ears. Some people might think it's unconventional, but I believe in being open about these things. Jada, Sam's 28-year-old sister, leaned forward. Eirene, what exactly are you saying? I'm saying that Sam and I are exploring the possibility of expanding our relationship, inviting someone else to join us occasionally. Rowan's very interested. The silence that followed was deafening. Lisa grabbed Derek's hand under the table. Cassidy was staring at her plate like she wanted to disappear. My father looked mortified, but it was Evelyn who spoke first, her voice ice-cold. Are you talking about adultery? It's not adultery if your husband knows about it, I said defensively. If anything, Sam's the one being difficult. He can't handle being with a real woman who has actual needs. Sam stood up so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor. Every eye in the restaurant seemed to turn toward our table. Sam, sit down, I hissed. You're making a scene. But Sam was already pulling out his wallet, throwing cash on the table. Happy birthday to me, he said quietly, then looked directly at me. When you're ready to have an honest conversation about what you've already done, not what you're planning to do, you know where to find me. He kissed the top of Mila's head. Daddy has to go, sweetheart. I'll see you tomorrow. Daddy, wait. Mila tried to climb down from her chair, but Sam was already walking away. I looked around the table at the horrified faces staring back at me. He's being so dramatic. It's just a conversation between married adults. No, Evelyn said, standing up and gathering her purse. It's not. She looked at me with undisguised disgust. Jada, take Mila home. I need to find my son. As they left, I tried to salvage the evening. Well, that was awkward, but you know how Sam gets when he's overwhelmed. Derek and Lisa exchanged glances. Actually, we should probably head out too, Derek said. Early morning tomorrow. Within minutes, the table had cleared except for Cassidy, my father, and me. Eirene, my father said quietly, what have you done? I haven't done anything wrong, I insisted. I'm trying to save my marriage by being honest about what I need. Cassidy finally looked up. By humiliating your husband in public? By talking about sleeping with your ex in front of his mother and your daughter? You were encouraging me just last week. I was encouraging you to talk to your husband privately, maybe suggest counseling. Not this. She gestured helplessly at the empty table. Not whatever this is. My father signaled for the check. I think you need to go home and think very carefully about what you want, Eirene, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're about to lose everything. But I wasn't ready to admit defeat. As I drove home alone, Mila had left with Jada. I convinced myself that Sam was just embarrassed. Once he calmed down, he'd see that I was right. We needed this. I needed this. I spent the rest of the evening crafting the perfect social media post about the importance of honest communication in marriage, carefully omitting the details, but hinting at our journey toward greater openness. The comments started coming in immediately, but they weren't what I expected. Monday morning at work, I could feel the whispers following me down the hallway. News travels fast in a small office, and apparently Derek had mentioned something to his wife, Lisa, who worked in accounting. By the time I reached my desk, I was sure half the building knew about Saturday night's drama. I decided to get ahead of the story. Can you believe how some men react when their wives try to communicate openly? I said to Janet from HR during our coffee break. I mean, we're adults. We should be able to discuss our needs without our husbands having complete meltdowns. Janet raised an eyebrow. What kind of needs? Just relationship stuff. Sam's always been emotionally fragile, you know. He can't handle any kind of change or growth. I suggested we try something new, and he completely overreacted. Made this huge scene at his birthday dinner, embarrassed everyone. That doesn't sound like the Sam I met at the Christmas party, Janet said carefully. He seemed pretty level-headed. That's just his public face. At home, he's controlling and jealous. He went through my phone. Can you believe that? Just because I'm friends with an ex-boyfriend. He's so insecure. But as the day wore on, I could tell my narrative wasn't landing the way I'd hoped. People were polite, but distant. Even Janet seemed skeptical. The real blow came when I got home to find Sam's car gone and a note on the kitchen counter. Staying at Mom's for a few days. Needs space to think. Mila's at Jada's tonight. She needs stability right now. I called him immediately. Sam, this is ridiculous. You're abandoning your family over nothing. Nothing? His voice was tired. Eirene, you publicly humiliated me in front of my mother and our daughter. You've been having an affair. I have not been having an affair. And now you're spreading lies about me at work. Derek called me. He said you're telling people I'm controlling and unstable. I never said unstable. I'm done, Eirene. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in disbelief. A lawyer? Over this? Sam was being completely irrational. I called Cassidy, but she didn't answer. I called my father, but he just sighed heavily and said, Eirene, maybe you should think about what you really want here. What I wanted was for everyone to stop treating me like the villain. I was the one trapped in a boring marriage. I was the one whose needs weren't being met. I was the one brave enough to try something different. But as I sat alone in our empty house, I couldn't shake the memory of Mila's confused face at the restaurant, or the disgust in Evelyn's eyes, or the way Sam had looked at me, like he didn't recognize me anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Rowan. Hey, heard things got intense at dinner. Maybe we should put Friday on hold? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Everyone's overreacting, but maybe you're right. Rain check? His reply was immediate. Probably for the best. Take care of yourself, Eirene. I felt a chill of abandonment. Even Rowan was backing away now. Tuesday brought worse news. Mila's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, called to say that Mila had been withdrawn and sad at school, asking when Daddy was coming home. Jada had apparently become her temporary guardian, while Sam figured things out. This is kidnapping, I told Cassidy when she finally returned my calls. He can't just take my daughter. He's her father, Eirene, and from what I hear, he's the one providing stability right now. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe you should have thought about Mila before you decided to blow up your marriage for a fantasy. I hung up on her. By Wednesday, even the people at work were treating me differently. The whispers had evolved into something else, not sympathy for my difficult husband, but concern about my judgment. Someone had apparently gotten the real story about Saturday night, and it wasn't the version I'd been telling. That evening, alone in the house that suddenly felt enormous and empty, I got the text that changed everything. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. But this time, it wasn't just a threat. The law office of Morrison, Keller and Associates was nothing like I'd expected. The mahogany furniture and leather-bound books screamed expensive, serious, permanent. I'd arrived 15 minutes early, hoping to catch Sam alone and talk some sense into him before things went too far. Instead, I walked into a conference room full of people who looked at me like I was a stranger. Sam sat at the far end of the table, flanked by his lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, and his sister, Jada. Across from them sat my father, looking older than I'd ever seen him, and Evelyn, whose expression could have frozen fire. Even Mila was there, sitting close to Sam and avoiding my eyes. "Mrs. Vellum," the lawyer said as I took my seat, "I'm Patricia Morrison. We're here to discuss the terms of separation and to address some concerning evidence that's come to light." "Evidence?" I tried to sound confident, but my voice cracked slightly. "This is all a misunderstanding. Sam's blowing everything out of proportion." Ms. Morrison opened a thick folder and began laying out papers. "Let's start with these text messages between you and Rowan Latch, dating back 3 months." My stomach dropped as I saw my own words printed in black and white. "Sam doesn't need to know about our coffee dates. He's so boring in bed. I need someone who actually wants me. Can't wait to feel alive again. Friday night, our night finally." "These are private conversations," I said weakly, taken out of context. "Context." Ms. Morrison's voice was dry. "Let's talk about context." She laid out another sheet. "Your credit card statements show regular charges at the Marriott downtown, always on weekdays, always for 3-hour periods." My face burned. "Those were work meetings." "With a gym instructor? During his work hours?" She consulted another paper. "According to Mr. Latch's schedule, provided by his employer, he was always working at the fitness center during these times, except for these specific dates, when he took personal time." I looked desperately at Sam, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Sam, please, let me explain." "There's more," Ms. Morrison continued relentlessly. "Bank records show cash withdrawals totaling $3,200 over the past 3 months. When asked, you told your husband these were for girls' nights and shopping trips. However, your friend Cassidy Brandt has provided a statement saying she rarely saw you during this period and was concerned about your behavior. Cassidy had no right. She had every right when asked to testify about the well-being of a child." Ms. Morrison's voice sharpened. "Because that's what this is really about, Mrs. Vellum. Your daughter." She placed a final document on the table. "This is a report from Mila's school counselor. Your daughter has been exhibiting signs of stress and anxiety. She's been asking her teacher if Mommy and Daddy are getting divorced and has been having nightmares." I looked at Mila, who was still pressed against Sam's side. "Honey, Mommy and Daddy are just working through some grown-up problems." "Don't." Sam's voice was quiet but firm. "Don't lie to her anymore." "I'm not lying. I'm trying to save our marriage." "By cheating on me for 3 months?" Sam finally looked directly at me, and I saw no anger there anymore, just exhaustion. "By planning to bring your lover into our home, into our bed, while our daughter slept down the hall? It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that." Ms. Morrison consulted her notes. "According to your text messages, you specifically planned for Mr. Latch to come to your home this past Friday evening. You told him your husband would come around and that it would be fun for everyone." Evelyn spoke for the first time, her voice shaking with controlled fury. "You were going to traumatize my granddaughter for your own selfish pleasure." "That's not... I would never hurt Mila." "But you already have," my father said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "Eirene, your daughter has been staying with her aunt because she's afraid to come home. She asked me yesterday if she did something wrong to make Mommy and Daddy fight." The room spun slightly. "She can come home any time. I'm her mother." "Actually," Ms. Morrison said, "that's what we need to discuss." She slid a document across the table. "Mr. Vellum is filing for divorce on grounds of adultery and is seeking primary custody of Mila." The words blurred on the page. You can't do this. You can't take my daughter away from me. I'm not taking her away, Sam said. I'm protecting her. From the chaos you've created. From the lies. From the instability. I made one mistake. This wasn't a mistake, Eirene. This was a choice. Multiple choices over months. You chose to cheat. You chose to lie. You chose to humiliate me publicly. You chose to plan bringing your affair partner into our home. Sam's voice remained steady, but I could see the pain beneath it. And when confronted with all of this, you chose to blame me. Ms. Morrison cleared her throat. Mrs. Vellum, we're prepared to offer reasonable visitation rights, but given the evidence of ongoing deception and poor judgment regarding your daughter's welfare, my client will be seeking primary custody. I looked around the room at these people who used to be my family, my support system. Now they all looked at me like I was a stranger, a dangerous stranger. I want to see my daughter, I said. You can see me, Mommy, Mila said in a small voice. But I want to stay with Daddy. The words hit me like a physical blow. My own daughter choosing him over me. This isn't over, I said, standing up shakily. I'll fight this. You can try, Ms. Morrison said calmly. But Mrs. Vellum, I'd advise you to think carefully about what a prolonged custody battle would mean for Mila. The evidence against you is substantial, and dragging this out will only cause more trauma for your daughter. As I walked toward the door, Sam spoke one last time. Eirene, I loved you. For 10 years, I loved you completely. I would have done anything to make you happy, except this. I couldn't do this. I wanted to say something cutting, something that would hurt him the way I was hurting. But looking at his face, at the genuine sadness there, I realized he was already hurt. I had hurt him, systematically and deliberately, for months. I'll be in touch through my lawyer, was all I managed to say. 3 weeks later, I found myself back in Ms. Morrison's office, but this time, the room felt different. Smaller somehow, less intimidating and more final. I'd spent those 3 weeks trying to find a lawyer who would tell me what I wanted to hear, that Sam was being unreasonable, that I deserved half of everything, that I could get joint custody despite the evidence. But every consultation had ended the same way, sympathetic looks and realistic assessments that I didn't want to accept. The truth was, I couldn't afford to fight this. The legal fees alone would bankrupt me, and the evidence against me was overwhelming. Worse, every day I delayed was another day Mila grew more settled in her new routine with Sam and Jada. Sam was already seated when I arrived, but he looked different. The exhaustion that had marked his features for months was gone, replaced by something that looked like peace. He'd lost weight, and there was a quiet confidence about him that I didn't remember from our marriage. Mrs. Vellum, Ms. Morrison said as I took my seat. Have you had a chance to review the final settlement agreement? I nodded, not trusting my voice. The papers in front of me represented the end of everything I'd thought I wanted to escape from, and the beginning of a reality I wasn't prepared for. The terms were fair, I had to admit. Sam got the house, which made sense, since Mila would be living there, but I got half the equity. He kept his retirement account, I kept mine. We'd split the savings. The custody arrangement was what hurt most. Sam got primary custody, with me getting Mila every other weekend and one evening per week. It was more generous than I'd expected, given everything that had come out, but it felt like losing her all the same. There's one more thing, Ms. Morrison said, consulting her notes. Mr. Vellum has prepared a statement he'd like to read. I looked up in surprise. This hadn't been part of the plan. Sam cleared his throat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Eirene, I've been thinking about what I wanted to say to you for weeks now. Part of me wanted to be angry, to list all the ways you hurt me and Mila. But I realized that won't help anyone move forward. His voice was steady, matter of fact. I think you convinced yourself that I was holding you back, that our marriage was the problem. Maybe it was, in some ways. Maybe we stopped communicating somewhere along the line, stopped seeing each other clearly. I felt tears starting to form, but I blinked them back. But Eirene, the solution was never to lie and cheat and manipulate. The solution was to be honest. With me, with yourself, with Mila, about what you needed. If you'd come to me and said you were unhappy, if you'd suggested counseling or even separation, we could have worked something out that didn't destroy everything. He looked directly at me for the first time in weeks. I would have let you go if that's what you really wanted. I would have been hurt, but I would have respected your choice. What I couldn't respect was the deception. Sam, I started, but he held up a hand. I'm not done. I want you to know that I don't hate you. You're Mila's mother, and she loves you. But I also need you to understand that this— He gestured at the papers between us. This is the consequence of your choices. Not my vindictiveness, not my inability to handle a real woman, not my jealousy or insecurity. This is what happens when you break trust so completely that it can't be repaired. The room was silent, except for the sound of my own breathing, which seemed too loud. I hope you find whatever it was you were looking for, Sam continued. I hope you figure out how to be happy without hurting the people who love you. And I hope you can be the mother Mila deserves, even if we can't be married anymore. He folded the paper and put it away. That's all I wanted to say. Ms. Morrison cleared her throat. If there are no objections, we can proceed with the signatures. I stared at the divorce decree in front of me. My name, Sam's name, and a judge's signature were all that stood between me and a completely different life. Where will you go? I asked Sam quietly. Mila and I are staying in the house for now. Eventually, maybe we'll move closer to Jada. She's been incredible through all this. And, are you seeing anyone? Sam's expression didn't change. That's not your concern anymore, Eirene. He was right, of course. I'd forfeited the right to ask those questions when I'd started seeing Rowan behind his back. I picked up the pen and signed my name with a hand that barely trembled. Sam signed next, his signature firm and decisive. That's it then, Ms. Morrison said, gathering the papers. The decree will be filed with the court tomorrow. You're officially divorced. Sam stood up and extended his hand to me, a formal, polite gesture that somehow hurt more than anger would have. Goodbye, Eirene. I'll have Mila call you tonight. I shook his hand, feeling the wedding ring that was no longer there. Sam, this is the last time we speak, he said quietly. From now on, everything goes through the lawyers or the custody app. It's better that way. He walked out without looking back, leaving me alone with Ms. Morrison and the wreckage of my choices. As I drove home to my empty apartment, I'd had to move out of the house the week before, I thought about the text I'd sent to Rowan that morning. It's over. Sam and I are officially divorced. His response had been polite, but distant. I'm sorry it worked out this way. Take care of yourself. Even he was gone now, probably relieved to be free of the drama I'd created. I pulled into the parking lot of my new building and sat in the car for a moment, looking up at the windows of my one-bedroom apartment. Tomorrow was Saturday, which meant I'd pick up Mila for our weekend together. She'd been polite but reserved during our supervised visits, and I knew it would take time to rebuild what I'd broken. Maybe that was the real consequence of everything I'd done. Not the divorce, not the custody arrangement, not even the loneliness. It was the knowledge that I'd had something real and imperfect and worth fighting for, and I'd thrown it away for a fantasy that had evaporated the moment it was tested. I thought about Sam's words. I hope you find whatever it was you were looking for. The terrible truth was, I still didn't know what that was. But I was going to have plenty of time alone to figure it out. As I walked up to my apartment, my phone buzzed with a notification from the custody app. Mila's soccer game tomorrow at 10 a.m. You're welcome to attend. It was signed simply, Sam. Even now, even after everything, he was thinking about what was best for our daughter. It was exactly the kind of quiet decency that I'd once found boring and now realized I'd never valued enough. I typed back, "I'll be there." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Maybe not toward the excitement and adventure I'd thought I wanted, but toward something more important. Becoming the kind of person who deserved a second chance at happiness, and the kind of mother Mila could be proud of. The elevator doors closed, and I watched the numbers climb toward my new life, smaller, lonelier, but finally, honestly, mine. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.